Ahoy everyone, it is Jeff aka Godless Scummer and welcome to this debate stream where we're going to be discussing the question, does God exist? So that when I say we, that means myself and Diesel, but we also have Ben, who's very, very kindly agreed to jump in and mod this shit show in in a minute.
Dumpster fire.
So in a minute, I'll be handing over to Ben. Hopefully we're going to have a quite interesting discussion. I think Diesel. So
we'll see.
What's that, Diesel?
I said we'll see.
All right. So if I'm remembering the format correctly, it's a 10-minute open discussion, 40 minutes of free talk to kind of make your points. A little less than 10 minutes, 7 minutes or so for final discussion, and 3 minutes for closing statements. Are we ready, gentlemen?
Do it like that, yeah. Diesel, you want to go first?
Well, I went first last time, so I think I'll hand over the mantle to you.
Oh, okay. I was gonna let you, as you're the guest here, but okay. So I'm about 10 minutes to make my.
Well,
case
I will.
then.
If you're gonna allow me, I do want to make a cheers to you. I do want to make a cheers to you. I am drinking an all-American beer, so whatever you're drinking over there, gotta support America.
Yeah. Okay. That's a debatable point as well.
Before we start, before we start, I do want to say that if Scummer does win this debate, keep in mind that it is like 12 o'clock where he's at. It's 9 o'clock here. I finished my workday, and I've already had a few Budweisers. So if I do lose, which I'm not going to, that might be contributing. So that's what I do want to say. That's my opening statement.
All right. Okay, I might hold you to what you just said.
Good.
There. Okay. So you want to time this off then, Ben? Before we start, just apologies. Ben's having a little glitch with his StreamYard, so he keeps dropping in and out every so often. So apologies for that, but it's not much that can be done about it. Okay, so the proposition on the table, as I see this, is: does God exist? Now, as Diesel said there at the beginning here about if I win and he wins, I'm not here to actually try and win a debate, actually. I'm here to try and make a case for why I believe the way I do and why I think I'm justified in believing the way I do. What I'm not going to be doing today is just saying I lack a belief, convince me otherwise. I'm not trying to do that today. If you want that, go to one of those bloody call-in shows. But I'm not interested in doing that. But I'm here to actually make a case and say that it is my belief that no God exists. And to lay out all the reasons why I believe that way in 10 minutes is just going to be impossible. So I'm going to have to really limit it to a couple of arguments or so, in all honesty. But I've got to say here, but I don't necessarily know that there is any one argument on either side of this debate that's an absolute clincher. I really don't. I think there's responses to all arguments. So what it is, the way I look at it is, you have to make a cumulative case with all the arguments you're there, and then come to a decision on what you think is the most likely the probability. Second of all, I'm going to just quickly say what particular God most of my arguments going to be against, and the two of my main arguments are going to be against what philosophers will call the God of classical theism. So, which is the idea that there's this God that is omnipotent, omniscient, morally perfect, loving in every way, and wants a personal relationship with us. that's what my main argument is going to be against. And I think I'm going to start with I'm going to start my first sort of argument with an old quote from the philosopher, the old ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus, and that is this: is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence cometh evil? Is he neither willing, able, nor willing? Why call him God? So this is what the earliest version of what we often refer to as like the logical problem of evil. But I tend to but I want to try and come a little bit more from an evidential problem of evil standpoint. And the reason I'm bringing the problem of evil is I think this is a question everyone in the world has considered in some way or shape or form. We've all thought about this. So the way I look at it is this: there's both moral and natural, what we could call moral and natural evils in the world. Natural evil is an evil we could say that is come across naturally, like a natural disaster or something like that. And a moral evil, an evil that is deliberate, that is perpetrated by an active moral agent, a person or whatever. Now, the fact that we have moral and natural evils in this world that are not our fault, and we have these in the world, they're not our fault, and we know of no greater good that can come from them. Secondly, for any such action, in totality of evil outweighs any known or unknown good. So any such evils that outweigh any kind of greater good, it follows then that they are then morally wrong. So then from there, we're saying that such evils are morally wrong, and for any action or evil that that for this to exist, that we say that if there is a being that is omnipotent, omniscient, perfect moral being, he should not be, he should not perpetrate any evils. He should not carry them out. So therefore, also follows, if there is such a being that, if there isn't, that performs, morally wrong actions, that a being that performs morally wrong actions, cannot be morally perfect. Therefore, if an omniscient being that he's not being, if there is an omniscient being, that being is not, it cannot be morally perfect. And then I'm saying, and I don't necessarily like the way to use the words by definition, but God, by the sort of classical theistic definition that I sort of tried to lay out there, is supposed to be omnipotent, omniscient, morally perfect. So I think when we look at the cumulative case that there are such evils in the world, and there is no intervention, there's nothing to stop them, they happen. It's logically you can conclude a case on that God does not exist. But there was another thing I brought up in my premise about this particular God, that this is a God that wants a relationship with us. Okay, this God, wants that relationship and that love for us, which puts me onto what I'm going to run a form of something that is known as divine hiddenness. And the premise of this is that there's people in the world, very much so, that are capable of relating to a God, who are capable of relating personally to God, but through no fault of their own, fail to believe. If there's a personal God who's surpassably great, then there shouldn't really be any people who can't that fail to believe, especially if people have genuinely sought God God out. So even from that premise, you can make a case that God doesn't exist, but I don't think that's good, and I don't necessarily think it's good enough just to say that. Now, the second premise of that was that if there's a personal God who's unsurpassably great, that God should be, unsurpassably loving. If there's a God that for any person, any time should be, capable of relating personally to God, for any person at any time who has it within them, to relate to God, they should be able to believe. So I want to extend a little bit on the argument then, and now we're going to say that necessarily, if God exists, this perfect, all-loving, God loves all such finite persons, as they may be. Necessarily, if God perfectly loves such finite persons as it may be, then for any capable finite person at any time is open to being in a positive, meaningful, conscious relationship to that person's at any time, then necessarily, if any capable finite person's God is open at any time to being, in a relationship as described, it's not the case that any non-resistant person in a state should be in a state of non-belief, on the on the proposition of God's existence. So there's at least if there's at least one capable finite person who is or uses non-resistant in a state of who is non-resistant to the idea of God, but is also in a state of non-belief in relation to that proposition that God exists, then the proposition fails. So basically what I was getting through reading now I must admit I did write a lot of that out from the SCP, but the thing is, if we're saying that this God has those kind of properties and whatever, I'm sure I missed something on this. Actually, I did. Oh yeah, I did miss something on this. So it's likely based upon the previous premises that God does not exist based on that. So, but what I'm saying here is that, this particular, the God I'm arguing against it so far would be the classical theistic interpretation of God. If someone is genuinely non-resistant to having that personal relationship with God, then there's no way that anyone should non-believe. I mean, I can take myself as an example. I've genuinely.
I gotta cut you off, Jeff. It's been a little over. It's been a little over 10 minutes for you. Sorry.
I didn't realize it got that long. No worries. We'll leave it there.
I'm actually going to give Diesel an extra 45 seconds to make up for it. So, Diesel, your time. Go ahead and start now.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. So first, thank you very much to Mr. Ben for waking up so early, for being the moderator. And thank you very much for Jeff for hosting this debate. In our first debate, I was wishing warm feelings towards the Queen for the celebration of the Jubilee, or the golden, whatever it was, that you guys are celebrating there. And so now in this
quickly, so you killed
now
her.
In this God. Now in the second debate, I do want to wish condolences to her departure, because actually as an American, it's pretty hard for me to understand the Queen and the Crown. But after going there last year and seeing some of the locations of importance, I was truly able to see how this can be an importance of a national identity. And I can assure that that's continually leaving a sting in your country. But fortunately, in that same trip, I also got to meet up with Jeff in person, and live and in person, and we got to hold an informal second debate, which I've been told that I lost. But, we had a great time together to be able to share some drinks and to have some conversations and to contextualize each other's journeys. And rather than just screen names or online icons, we got to read the real life flesh and blood avatars that we've become so accustomed to online. And, that being said, just right before this talk, I got to see a debate held by a hometown local, Piers Morgan, between a Muslim and a rabbi about the crisis in Israel. And both the men were resorting to personal attacks, continual interruption, and yelling to make their points. And I truly trust that Jeff and I will not have that problem tonight or this morning for you. And I sincerely look forward to getting to the source and understanding your atheism. But truth be told, I myself was an atheist for a while, for several years. And I do know that people have a variety of different reasons why they might adopt this worldview. So now onto the topic of whether or not God exists. Well, if I'm being honest, neither of us really know for sure on this topic. The only way I could definitely prove that God exists is if I were to pull him out of my pocket somehow here, show him to you, or scroll over and Jesus was right next to me in frame. And I'm relatively sure that neither of these scenarios are going to happen tonight in this talk. But I would like to start off first with atheism and work my way over to theism. First of all, at its ontological core, atheism has no ability to be proven. So I believe this is one of the reasons that atheists have chosen to adopt a position of not having a belief in God. Of course, though this is a nonsensical position, and I have great respect for people like Scummer who are honest about their positions, and I genuinely mean that. But let's get on to the reason first very quickly about why it can't be proven. You see, mankind and all her recent ancestors, if we have existed for a grand total of 3 minutes, if you were to put the scale of the Earth into terms of a single day, a single 24-hour period. So we appeared basically at 11:57, just moments before midnight in the history of the Earth. And that means that man, in all of our wisdom, we've missed out on almost the entire history of the world. And this is much worse in the cosmos because at almost 14 billion years old, 14, 13, whatever, billion years old, it's roughly 3 times the age of the Earth. And although we can gather data on its beginning, no one was around to see the beginning of the formation of the universe. So even if we could have somehow managed to summon all the wisdom of all humanity, pulling together all of our resources, and we managed to attain 100% knowledge of this planet and all the prehistory, we still have to come to grips with the fact that we are just a speck of dust orbiting a mediocre star out in a sea of billions of galaxies, each containing billions of stars. So to sum this all up really quickly, to prove that there was no God, you would have to be everywhere in the billions of light years of space to rest assured that God wasn't in any other part of the cosmos. You would also have to be omniscient to know if a God ever did exist or if he was no longer alive. And finally, you would have to be all powerful to make sure that he wasn't hiding in some kind of other dimension or something. So essentially, to affirm that God didn't exist and prove that, you would actually have to be God yourself. So moving from that over to theism, I would have to say that, here there's a little bit of a problem because throughout history, tens of billions of people have alleged that they've encountered this deity or force or being or whatever you want to name it. Now, of course, we could all be wrong with that. But you would have to believe as an atheist that you are right and billions upon billions of other people have all been wrong. You mentioned cumulative case in your opening. You basically have to believe that you're right and everyone else is wrong. You would have to trust that God or gods have not ever visited this earth from now, for either now or in the past, or now on the other side of the universe, seeding some other civilization. In my opinion, to hold to a hardcore atheism, you have to have quite a high level of hubris or chutzpah if you can speak to billions of other people's existence. So I, as a Christian, I do not do this. I was an atheist myself, as I said, when Jesus Christ spoke to me in my room nearly 10 years ago, and he radically changed my life for the better. although I am completely convinced of this and I would go to the grave for this belief, I would never, ever, ever dare to speak on another person's existence. I can tell you what I experience, but I will not comment on a Jews or Muslim or Hindus or trans or gay person. I would not speak on their existence because I don't know what they've gone through in their life. I have no interest in disproving others' real life experiences or their religions at that. In my own humble opinion, we are all traversing the universe together, and we have been placed on this rock for reasons that we may not be totally aware of all the time, or maybe at all. I mean, we don't really know if God's a jokester, or if he's playing with us, or he's evil. We don't know all that. All we know is what we're experiencing from day to day. So, and I do want to say this, that all the Christian arguments that I've heard so far that are based on what he called classical theism, they all have failed for a variety of reasons. How am I doing on time, by the way? So I don't go over like Scummer.
You have a little over 3 minutes.
Okay. So you see, Christians and other theists, they merely assert that God is real and give absolutely no explanation onto how he exists. So I believe that that's a bit intellectually dishonest to do so, just so plainly like that. And it seems also, you know, Scummer's pointing out that it seems foolish as to why he would create, you know, humans who continually fight over things as foolish as borders that don't even exist, that just exist in, you know, in our imagination and lines that we draw on the globe. Here, I would like to draw from an atheist, Elon Musk, who has asserted that we are likely living in a simulation due to the fact that in a universe that exists for billions of years in an unimaginably large space, that it's only likely that at some point in the future, a civilization will create an AI or simulations and be able to mimic the exact scenario in which we're exhibiting, that we're experiencing now. And the likelihood that we're the one true reality that exists out there is just, you know, when you put it in the scale of the universe, it's not very likely. And I do want to say that, you know, if there was some civilization, the likelihood that a civilization would never exist with the ability to reverse entropy or time travel or manipulate the fabric of physics to the point that they could create some kind of bootstrap scenario in which they could somehow paradoxically figure out how to start the whole Big Bang. And, you know, this doesn't seem very likely that we're the only ones who are out there in the universe, and that, you know, at some point in the future, this could happen. So, you know, I don't know the origins of God. I certainly wasn't around when the Big Bang happened. But if the universe is as infinite and complex as we are, you know, told to believe by physicists, having properties that are outside of our realms of understanding, such as black holes, time dilation, quantum entanglement, then it may be possible outside of the particle horizon, what's visible and testable inside of what we can experience, that there is a God out there, and somehow or another he was able to rise in all that, you know, and all that what we're not able to experience or test right now. So, you know, maybe God is a perfectly natural manifestation of the science of the universe. In postulating this, this would solve some of the problems that Scummer has actually raised, such as the problem of evil, the problem of creation, and the problem of divine hiddenness. Because quite frankly, as a Christian, speculating that God was already perfect and already had perfect love, then there's frankly no reason to create humans in the first place. So that would solve some of those problems. But the truth is, maybe God's fallible. Maybe he has sides of himself that he doesn't like. Maybe he has evil tendencies that he's working to eliminate. You know, hardline Christian theology actually fails miserably to try to answer these. But I will submit that they are made infinitely more plausible when you add some additional premises. You know, maybe God wants us to ascend to.
Hey, Diesel, thumbs up, bro. Yep, thumbs up.
Okay, all right, there we go.
Well, now we are entering into the general discussion. For the most part, I'm just sort of gonna kick rocks and drink coffee because I can trust these two to be adults and not talk over each other. But if they do happen to, I will step in. For the most part, though, for the next 30 minutes or so, I just plan to be a timekeeper. So, gentlemen, go ahead and discuss.
Okay.
Go check your email.
I'm going to say I'm quite pleasantly surprised there because that wasn't the approach I was expecting you to take. But I guess now, but then we're speculating on properties of God. Now, okay, admittedly, I didn't sort of necessarily get to, the end of where I was going to go, that, which was a bit more of a global atheist position, which is a pretty short one, but it is really about what reasons do we have to believe? And then I suppose, if we're looking at the property, I mean, really, if we're looking at the properties of God, what would we expect to find? This is kind of why I went for a more approach towards the classical theistic one. And, I just assumed, with you being a Christian, I would assume that was where you probably would have gone. But, it does, it's a bit, it's a bit all over the place to me to speculate on whether God's fallible or whatever. I'm sort of struggling to see where you're going with your premises on things like that, though.
Okay, so I will. Okay, then I will come in because I didn't get to finish making the case I was planning to. Maybe I actually timed that out in the beginning where I was making it 10 minutes, but that was before the beers, so maybe those actually slowed me down. But okay. Well, so I do want to say that some of this is actually a attempt at theodicy, which is what theodicy is actually trying to explain the apparent problems of evil that you mentioned. Okay.
Because I know what a theodicy is. All right.
Okay. Good.
Just I know.
Well, maybe someone else doesn't, but
okay.
So because the problems that you raised were with, as you said, you mentioned classical theism. I don't even know what that means really, but I guess if you're saying that God is logically, like perfect in all these ways, then I would actually 100% agree with you that that's logically impossible for a variety of different reasons. So I would completely concede those points to you that hardline Christian theology is contradictory. So I'm not a hardliner and I'm not like a literalist. So I actually think that there's some validity in what you're saying. I'll start there.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I don't want to go too much against you on personal experiences. Too much. I don't like personal experience, personal relation.
That's fine.
I won't necessarily go too hard against you on that when back in my polytheistic days, I believed I'd had a very genuine experience of the Norse god Odin. But it was just I really, after a period of time, I started to think about these things, that more logical and reasonable explanations as to the phenomenon that and I'm only speaking for myself here, but for what I personally thought I was going through, or with an experience like that, is it's generally speaking, I came to think that there was far more logical and reasonable explanations for that experience, but I'm not necessarily saying that's necessarily the case for everyone. So I won't necessarily go too hard with you on there. But I think, like Trolley Dave, I've just seen in the comments actually said that's a new move. Just agree that God is incoherent, and that's, I guess, why I'm having a little bit of the issue for that. I'm not quite understanding the kind of God you're arguing for, in a sense.
Okay. So So then, all right. So let's start here. Because I actually really appreciate people who are honest about what they believe. Okay, and for a variety of reasons, as far as even calling out a lot of the abusive elements inside of your own community, have a lot of respect for you. Being a Patreon of yours for the last year, we have a monthly call where we chop it up, and I really appreciate talking to you because I believe that you're honest and you're a good faith actor in these topics.
I try to be.
So I do want to. What was that?
I try to be.
I mean, I'm not saying I like you or anything, but I'm just saying as far as this topic goes, I believe that. So that being said, if you believe, so let's just say you positively, let's start here. I'll ask you, you positively believe that there is not a God out there anywhere in the universe, okay?
I would say that is my current position. I could be wrong on that, but that is,
of course,
that is my current belief, and I'm happy to sit here and tell you, as you pointed out, we've gone through this a few times. I'm not one of these online atheists who's just going to sit back and say I lack belief. I mean, right. I suppose that this could be a discussion for another time. I can see why people use it. I just don't happen to like that approach. And if I think if a lot of these other online atheists were being absolutely truthful, they probably believe the same way I do. They just don't want to come out and they feel they have to and adopt a burden of proof. And I'm not necessarily saying that now just to be clear, when I say I'm talking more in a philosophical thing. I don't think I can sit here and necessarily prove today that there is no God. What I am trying to sit here today and say that I am reasonable in having that belief. I'm trying to meet a burden of justification for holding that belief.
Okay, so let me just piggyback off of that for a second then. So you believe that it is completely possible for billions of galaxies with billions of stars to be content to a single point and then to burst out and create the universe in which we now see. You perfectly believe that it's possible for all that to happen by completely natural means. So I don't straw man you. Let me just
I don't have an objection to it. I don't have an objection to it. Wasn't really going to sit. I'm not been intending on sitting here and discussing scientific models with you, to be honest, because because the scientific model that we have is just the basic explanation for how the universe, as we in its current state, originated. Now, what came before that? I don't think we really know. There's speculation, there's informed speculation, but that's a whole topic. Big Bang cosmology is a topic that is out of my wheelhouse, in all honesty with you.
Right. And obviously, I think it's out of both of ours. But the point is that you're willing to trust the science, and I'm willing to trust the science as well. But you're willing to say that you believe that all this was possible just by chance, just by purely naturalistic means, correct? That's what I'm trying to get to the point.
Yes, I believe it's possible. I believe it's reasonable to hold that belief.
Okay, so then why would you not assume that at some point in the billions of light years of time, in the billions of years that exist, like a civilization or a person would not advance to the point of time in which they could manipulate, science to the point in which they could appear to be as a god, in which we would think would be as a god? I'm genuinely curious on that.
I mean, yeah. If you're positing something like that, is something like that 100% impossible? I don't know. I don't necessarily like to go with saying things are impossible, but I am going to say I think it is highly unlikely. It's very high. I think it is very highly unlikely. I mean, it's strange what you're positing here, because it seems to be almost a deistic approach that you're positing here with the God you're
actually
positing. It's not a deistic. Okay, this is perhaps why I'm getting my wires crossed, because I'm still not in. sure what properties of a God that you're actually trying to advocate for at the moment.
Okay, so first of all, the last thing I wanted to say in my opening statement was that, whether or not I prove to you God exists or not, it doesn't really matter. Whether or not I was able to prove to you that God actually did speak to me, because I can't even prove that to myself. It could have been an alien shooting some kind of, message to me via some technology, or it could be, another false God trying to convince me off the truth path of Hinduism. I have no way to verify that or prove that in any sense of the word. Okay. I know what I experienced, and I know what I experienced changed my life. So whether or not I prove to you that God exists or not, ultimately, at the end of the day, is not really relevant for you yourself, because what you yourself need to do is experience God yourself and to see the kind of difference he can make in your life. So, there is a practical argument. Oh, good.
Okay, yeah. So finish your thought, Diesel. Go on.
No, that was basically the gist of what I wanted.
Okay.
What I ended off, which Ben so rudely interrupted me. Ben rudely interrupted me, by the way, because I was almost to make this point.
Now, again,
and I do want to see.
So, I mean, really, okay. So, if we're saying that one of my things is I haven't experienced God. Now, as I said, I thought I'd had a personal experience when I was into polytheism with like the Norse god Odin, and I've come to over the years dismiss that because I think there's more logical explanations for what I experienced at that time. But again, in a way, now I admit that when I came into this, I was really arguing against like I said, the classical theistic type of a god. But I can still, to some way, that problem of divine hiddenness still is a thing there to me. That what it is I need to experience God. I need to open my heart, whatever it is, to that possibility. Well, I hate to say this, I've done that. I spent years doing that. There are people that spend a long, long time doing that, and they don't have that experience, and they're trying to seek answers. I think you and I are still trying to seek truth. That's why we're here today. I genuinely think that's why we're here. We're both trying to seek truth in our own way. But here's the thing: sure. If you genuinely opened yourself to all those possibilities and really, really try to find God or any type of God whatsoever, and you still, after all that, you've weighed everything, and you still haven't found that. It is reasonable for you at that point to then conclude there's probably no God.
Okay, so
it is reasonable.
I will put on the hat of.
Okay.
Okay, so I will put on a hat of a classical theist for a second. Not to say that I prescribe to this, but you would agree that let's just assume that a God was out there. You would agree that he would not be able to do things like that are impossible to do, correct? Like creating a round circle.
Creating a round circle is quite easy. Squared circle, I think.
Turn it on its side.
You meant squared circle. You're probably meant to say, I think, but
okay, whatever. You get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like that God shouldn't be able to contradict laws of logic or so on. Yeah. Okay.
Well, somebody said I could draw a squared circle, whatever you're talking about. He's like, yeah, this is it on its side. But that's what they said in Bible college. They had a bunch of little one-liners like that.
Okay.
I'll
just go.
Okay. So the problem is that because there is a problem from a classical theism side, which is why does God create anything? because I heard J. Mike, like on one of his call-in shows, talking about how, well, if God was perfect, he would just like exist. He wouldn't need to create anything. He would just be perfect all in and of itself, you know? And that's if you're thinking about a classical, as you call it, a classical theism God, where he's already all perfect. And so you run into a big problem with why does God create anything, you know? And so if you start to take this out to its logical conclusions, there's only a few things in which actually make any sense. One is that God can't do things that are logically impossible. So God can't create only good, because in creating only good and not giving people the ability to experience, let's just say, like cold weather, you know, if we only experience warm weather, then we would not have any kind of understanding or appreciation of what warm weather is if we never experienced the cold. You know, it's actually snowing today here in South Korea. Kind of caught me off guard. But so there is a problem there, because in Christian theology, and I will talk about classical Christian theology, is that it talks about heaven as being like there's no sun in heaven, and that God is the only thing that illuminates like heaven. And so if you get into this experience, then the divine hiddenness problem makes perfect sense, because if you were just born in heaven and you were created in perfectness, then you would have no ability to understand free will or the effects of the consequences of your choices for mistakes that you made. One, two, if everyone is created perfect, you wouldn't have the ability to exercise things like hospitality, compassion, goodwill, charity, if everything is already perfect. Okay. So this life.
Okay, well,
yeah, good.
Okay. I just want to come in on something you sort of said there, because there is a question I wanted to ask there. Now, so let's say then, you know, you said that God, that it's probably necessary for, you're saying that it is necessary for us to you know, experience those hardships, those evil. I mean, just we can talk this back to the problem of evil as well. That it might be necessary for us to get to them things. Now, if evil is necessary, then to me, you know, or you cannot create, if you, or I don't want to ascribe a position that you haven't made here, but if would you say, if coming from that perspective, would you say that God would have to create a world where a certain degree of evil is necessary? Would you say, is that where you were going? I just want to make sure I'm being clear on your position here.
I might take it a step further. And
okay.
So I might take it a step further and say that the Hindu explanation of God makes more sense, more logical sense, that God is just everything. So he is the good and the evil. He's just, everything is just a manifestation of him. And actually, if you look at Isaiah, the book in which I get my name from, it actually talks in there about God being the creator of good and evil. So I think, considering that's in the Bible, I don't think there's any way to get around saying that God is just all good. Because even if you were to follow straight line Christian theology, there's a lot of problems, such as God literally creating Satan in the first place, knowing what he's going to do. And I could tell you, because I grew up in, fundamentalist Christian circles, was somehow they managed to logically reason their way out of that. I shouldn't say logically. They somehow able to.
I was going to say
dismiss that.
But they can do the mental gymnastics to get around that, without a doubt.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, because obviously because the big, one of the big sort of things I've thought about with this whole thing with the problem of evil, because I've thought about this, and that is, maybe a certain degree of evil is necessary for us or whatever. But then, to me, or I've gone a little bit further and even posited the idea, that would, can you? And I've heard, and I say I've not only if I posit the idea, I've heard some Christians posit the idea that you cannot have a world with you cannot have a a world where without or any type of existence without evil. So, which I then turn around to them and explain heaven then, because that's a place that's supposed to exist without evil. So it's all a very, it's all a little, some of the standard Christian responses, and I'm actually kind of somewhat happy that you're not going with them, because I think it's making for a far more interesting conversation that we're having.
Well, hold on. I do want to chime in on one thing, because I'm not sure how much of my background I've told you about this, but actually was strong-armed to go into public college my freshman year, and
sorry, can I
girl I was in love with,
can I just grab my vape for 2 seconds? Sorry, a vape.
Absolutely. Ben, thank you so much for being so patient and kind. Really appreciate it.
It was about 10 minutes left in the discussion phase, by the way.
Oh yeah, so a bit of my superhero background story, my origin story, is that I was at a Bible college, and a girl that I was in love with got bit by a snake, and she wound up dying on a mission trip to Indonesia. And I know that has zero relevance to whether or not God exists, but for a young 20-year-old, that made a really strong impact on my life. One of the most, not physically beautiful, but one of the most internally beautiful people I've ever met in my life, whose smile still sticks with me to this day. But she was trying to outdoing the will of God, and she got bit by some poisonous snake out in the jungle. And so that did wind up leading me to become an atheist. But so I did wind up going to, a secular school and getting an education in, philosophy, argument, rhetoric, logic, all that stuff. And so later on, much later on, much later on, when I was 32 years old, I did have an experience with God myself. And so, but I did have that background to where there was a logical side of me that led me to reject religion in the first place. So I'm not, very kind on the hardliners, especially the right wing, the hate-filled side of my religion. But I do think that if people were just to take a little bit of time to learn argument and rhetoric and logical fallacies and stuff, I think we would avoid a lot of problems in this terrain, because I have seen you calling out some illogical stuff online. So kudos to you.
Yeah, well, and I should just say for everyone watching this, just so you know, I don't think either of myself and Diesel are great philosophers here. Okay, we're so I'm
speak for yourself.
Well, I'm just saying.
Speak for yourself.
I know there's going to be some people academic philosophers. I know Trolley Dave's in the chat, and he's probably pulling his bloody hair out at both of us right now. But no, I'm quite appreciating this conversation. But anyway, finish your thought. I don't think you'd quite finished your thought there, so I'll let you get to the end of it.
I don't even know if I had a full thought. I mean, I probably did before I finished up. I kind of killed the last half of that beer. So, okay. Trolley Dave, I would like to see you 6 beers down and how logical you are.
Dude, he'd run rings around all 3 of us after a dozen beers. I trust me on that. Okay. But I think you see where, I think we both see where each other's point of view is coming from here. But I think where we're sort of somewhere down the whole thing with the problem of evil. Were we on, weren't we? Where we got sort of diverse.
Okay. Okay. Well, let me make one point. The problem of evil, the best case scenario you could possibly do with the problem of evil is just to prove that God's evil. Maybe God's just a Todger, you know what I mean? Which is the UK word for Johnson. Maybe he's a Johnson. That's the word for Johnson. That's the best thing that you prove. Okay. So if you want to say, okay, that God can't be good and evil exists at the same time, then I'll grant that premise to you completely, utterly. Utterly.
Yeah, I would question if there is if even if there was such a being and he was malevolent by nature. I don't know that I could grant him that he's a god, or that entity is a god. I'd have trouble granting that. You know.
Well, I think maybe then what we should have done, and I should have messaged you this, is what I should have messaged you. What are we even talking about when we, talk about God? We should have come to a conclusion about what we're defining as God, because I think there's multiple ways to define God. If you define him as a supreme being, then I would argue that Elon Musk is God. That guy is about as close to being divine as you could get. But obviously, if we're going to go with
you're on thin fucking ice now, you really are.
Well, okay, I'm not referring to. I'm just referring to.
I know you're joking there, but for Christ's sake, Elon.
Right. Okay. It has nothing to do with the other issue I know you guys are thinking about, but it's just the business acumen and the intelligence I was aiming at. But all I'm saying is that if you're going with the supreme being or the creator, because under the definition of being a creator, then what I was saying is that some advanced civilization or some advanced being in the future could somehow reverse entropy and restart the Big Bang and some kind of bootstrap paradox similar to Terminator, where in the future, some Terminators are being sent back and they somehow create themselves. If that's, you know what I mean? We have to clearly define what we're talking about with God. And maybe we'll have to do a round two what we mean by God.
Possibly, but I have too much bloody time arguing about definitions with people as it is anyway. I've got so sick of it. But the thing is, when we could sit here positing all types of any types of what possible gods there might be, whether it be classical theist type or a deistic kind of god. I don't know, supreme, like an alien kind of thing. Whatever, we could sit here posit that all day long. The arguments I was coming from, particularly like the evidential problem of evil, because I wanted to go more with that rather than the logical problem, because the logical problem is more a deductive argument, and I was going, where I prefer a bit more of an inductive approach. Now, there is a problem with induction, of course, and I do need to read up on David Hume problem of induction a little bit more, but in a certain way, it's still a logical approach. We can sit here and posit all these kind of things, but we have to kind of look at, like I said, the cumulative. Like I said, to begin with, a cumulative case and looking what's happened before. Now, we can make an educated guess on what might happen in the future based on what's happened before. Now, it doesn't mean that will necessarily happen that way. That's the problem with it, but it is probably one of the better approaches we can take with this. That's just me spitballing out thoughts now, but.
Okay. I think the last point I want to end with is the whole divine hiddenness.
Okay.
Because I do want to say this, that, my mom, this year was 15 years of my mom passing away. And so my mom never got to see me be a father. And so I have thought about this, I know the pain of what the last 15 years have been of me not seeing my mother. And I know what the joy have been of me seeing my daughter. And if, experiencing her. And I can only imagine that if I were to lose my daughter, the pain would be magnified by 1,000. Because for all the love I had for my mother, that would maybe fit into the pinky tip of my daughter. So what I think about that, the scale of loss and, you know, what people have experienced, especially, we have to say this, like the gravity of what the people in Gaza are experiencing right now, you know, losing their children. We do have to take that into account, you know, like these things are truly happening in the universe. But I think of this, like, if I were to be deprived of the presence of my daughter for a time, it completely makes sense that being able to be reunited, as far as, like, if I were to see my mom again tomorrow, I would know what the gravity of the last 15 years have been, you know, the dreams and the somehow convincing yourselves of realities that don't exist. Like, I know what that is. I know how that feels. And so if you're just with somebody who's immortal and who's always with you, I simply do not think that you would be able to experience the fullness of the essence of that person. So it just totally makes sense for me. And I'm telling you, as hard as I am on Christian theology, it totally makes sense why God is being hidden for a while. Because if you have the scale of the universe of billions of years, or maybe trillions of years, what might exist in the future, then it makes sense that for a time that he stays hidden, so that we have a deeper appreciation for him at a later date. That's all I'll say about that.
Okay, I mean, it's easy positing that, but I'm not necessarily convinced by that argument. The basic premises of this is this someone who is, like I said, is not deliberately shutting themselves off to the possibility of God. I'm still not, even though I'm an atheist, and I'm, like I said, my belief is that there are no gods. I'm not opposed to changing my mind if there's, you know, if there's a really good, or there are a lot of very good reasons to convince me otherwise. I'm open to changing my mind upon that. But I've genuinely been a seeker in my time. You know, I've generally, you know, I've sought truth. You know, not just naturalistic truth within the world, but spiritual truth. I've genuinely sought that in my life, and I've gone through phases. Now, okay, I've never been sold on Christianity. I'll make that clear. Even as a kid, even though I had to go through the whole ritual of prayers in school and whatever, but it was nothing hardcore. It was only C of E, okay, but I have genuinely sought religious truth. I've read the Bible. I've read the Quran. Okay, I haven't studied the Quran in any great detail, but you know, I've went through that thing of polytheism. I've genuinely been open to the possibility of God. And I've had to weigh up things in a cumulative case or whatever. I've come to the conclusion that it's most likely there is no God. That's my belief. So there is a problem. There is a bit of an issue there. This is kind of why I like the divine hiddenness argument in a way, that if you and again, admittedly, it does rest a bit upon the classical theistic interpretation that I laid out earlier, and I'll admit that. But if there is a God out there that wants a personal relationship, hey, I've been open to that for a long time. It's not been open to that. Well, it's definitely not been open to me, and it's not been open to that with millions of other people around the world.
Well,
I see a problem with that, and that's perhaps, and I'll just finish on this. This isn't the sole reason I think no God exists. Neither is the problem of evil. These are a couple of things that I've gone with for the basis of this discussion. And it, like I said, it's a cumulative case of weighing up all of the arguments and whatever. What do I think is most probable? And that's just the conclusion I have personally got to. So,
well, you made your point. I do want to say that if I were God, I wouldn't want to have a relationship with you either. So take it as you may.
Okay.
No,
can I just address someone in the
No,
chat?
totally
That is demonstrably false. Aristotle was around before Christianity. I'm afraid that is demonstrably wrong.
And that's Chris trolling. No, thank you for the talk, though.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But yeah. Okay.
No, I was a joke. I'm joking. Trying to end off on a positive note here.
All right. I actually saw a few questions in the comments. Do we want to go about those before we do our final statements, or?
Okay. Yeah, let's go for a few of them.
See if Chris is trolling.
I haven't
seen one from Godless Granny. Let me see if I can find it. Not necessarily a question, but it is directed at Diesel. Why would God make it is a question. I read it wrong. Why would God make people he knows will spend eternity in hell if he creates them?
Okay, well, if you're God, first of all, I'm not God, so I don't really know how to answer that question. But if I were to think about this, the greatest act of like compassion would be saving somebody who is completely undeserving of it. So, for example, like saving a Hitler. If Hitler's roasting in hell and God's able to reverse engineer, the circumstances that landed him there, because one of my favorite movies of all time is Butterfly Effect with Ashton Kutcher. One of the only jobs he's ever done a decent job in acting, but I digress. But that movie is about like changing little small details in someone's life and completely changing their total trajectory in life. And so there is a story about like Adolf Hitler, like staying in art school and not getting kicked out, and kind of like where his life might have went as a result of that. So when I think about this, I think the greatest act of compassion would be reverse engineering and butterfly infecting somebody out of the circumstances, maybe even hell. And I believe that if there's this God that's all possible, he would be able to do something like that. So.
Okay. I'll just say the existence of most Ashton Kutcher stuffs is another good reason for saying there is no God. Okay.
I got another one from Godless Granny.
Checkmate theists.
Touche. Touche.
Got another one from Godless Granny. Why would anyone need to know about free will, etc.? God made angels in heaven. Are they suffering from the lack of free will?
Well, I don't know, because I've had some conversations with atheists about this, and I've discussed this. Like in South Korea, we have a lot less free will than we do in America. For example, we don't have the free will to go out and just get guns readily available. And so as a result of that, I get to send my daughter to a school where the thought of her getting shot, in the head by an AR-15 doesn't even enter into my consciousness. So I have weighed this out because we, as an American, there's a lot of emphasis on free will and, having a lot of rights. And so I've just seen the other side of that where some rights are taken away and as a result, a greater good is done. So in my own personal opinion, like free will, a lot of rights is not necessarily a good thing. So I know that's not completely answering the question, but I think I definitely do think that having free will is probably not a good thing, especially when you realize that because she also mentioned hell, but when you come to terms with the fact that, well, a free will could potentially end you in Hades for eternity, then that's probably not a good thing to actually have. So I think definitely foregoing free will for the greater good. Maybe I've lived in Asia for too long. That's probably my problem. I've lived here too long.
I find it interesting because I actually expected you to defend free will a bit more today, and you've kind of gone a bit of another way, because I actually had something in mind that I was going to run by you, but just if you'd gone that way. And again, this is kind of relating to the problem of evil. I'll just put it out there just in case any theist or just if anyone is thinking about this, and this is to the thought of if there is, the classical theistic God exists. Okay. Now, a thing I thought about, and I know, and I'll use this example because I know this is going to be quite dear to your heart, Diesel. Is there's a little place a little bit to the north, just a few miles to the north of where you currently reside.
The atheist paradise, you mean? Where the atheists are taking over?
The alleged People's Democratic Republic, that place. But you've got a thing here now. Now where I was going to go with this was that if God doesn't intervene, because there's an argument out there that God doesn't intervene because He gave us free will, and He doesn't want to intervene with free will. And now, if you end up with a society, and North Korea is a good example of this because it is like the closest example of like the Orwellian totalitarian kind of state or whatever, where you've had generations of people who have not been able to exercise any kind of free will or even understand or to be able to be open to having a relationship with God. And millions of people are in that condition because of a handful of people keep them constantly in that position. There's people that will live and die, and their children will live and die in that state. And that comes to a bit of a question that if there is, an omnipotent, omniscient, good God, at some point when you're looking at that of millions of your own, and He wants to have that relationship with you, at some point you've got to look at millions of His children not being denied that opportunity. At some point, I think he would have a moral obligation to intervene in that. And
so first of all, I actually completely agree with everything that you just said right now. But I do want to say that I actually have got a chance to go to North Korea on 2 separate occasions. And both occasions, I was actually an atheist. And that was the first step that was the first crack in the ceiling to get me to leaving my atheism, because I came to understand that under my worldview that depriving people of rights, the way that I saw that the Kim regime was doing so in North Korea to benefit themselves, was akin to me herding cattle or sheep or whatever to benefit myself. And so I couldn't find a rational basis to condemn that inside of my atheism. But I do agree with what you just said right now. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, there has to be some kind. Yeah. No, I agree with what you said, though. I agree with what you said. I agree with what you said. Because
I sometimes just feel you're a little mistaken, and I see it do. And this is a genuine criticism. This is where I think you're sometimes a little bit mistaken with this. And I know that a number of Christian apologists do this as well. And hey, S.J. Thomason, I'm looking at you here. Tend to equate societies like that with, atheism, which is a very, very flawed approach to take.
Well, I'm just saying I agree with what you were just saying right now, because ultimately what's happened is the atheist Kim regime has actually taken away people's rights. So I do agree with that, because now for example, I've been into converted Buddhist temples that were converted into museums that were, no longer being used as Buddhist temples. And interesting, if you take a look at the fall of the Khmer Empire, there is this. Well, it's not really entirely sure what's known, but one of the things that is speculated about that is that there was a changing in the religious attitude towards Hinduism, and from going from Hinduism, where they were the leaders were claiming to be like, basically messengers from God, and switching over to Buddhism, where there's more like a collective egalitarian, where people are equal, or there's not this hierarchy in the world. And so that was one of the things that contributed to their downfall. So I can completely understand the Kim regime seeing Buddhism as a threat to their this guy's at the top here. I don't know, from God or whatever, however you want to, their weird ideas of that. But I actually completely agree with what you were talking about at the beginning, because and I do say this is why I was telling you why I do believe that Hinduism ultimately, the idea of that, about God just beat everything, it actually makes more logical sense than classical deism, as you're critiquing at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think time for 2 more questions. The next one comes from Mage Grey Wolf. It's just under Godless Granny's question that I asked last. Let me actually find it. It scrolled away because this is a very fun app.
Yeah, I'm scrolling back as well. Is this the one that says, if we take a god that creates evil, is this a god worth worshipping? Is that the one you're looking at?
Yes, that's the one I'm thinking of.
Okay. I'll let you go on that one, Diesel.
Scummer. No, I think that one was for Scummer.
Well, I think I've already made my position pretty clear on that, and that would be no. I think I've made that pretty clear.
Well, then you're talking about a completely different question than whether or not God exists, because, like, I say this: the problem of evil is really nonsensical for atheists to raise, because in the best case scenario, that's all you prove. Okay, God's evil. Okay, there's that. Cosmic, I believe it's Cosmic Skeptic. Hold on, I believe Cosmic Skeptic. He made a really good video. Yeah, Cosmic Skeptic, about the evil God hypothesis, and he dives in pretty deep. And I would really suggest people look at that, about trying to evaluate this whole premise by saying that God is evil, if God could be evil, because it's a problem for both sides. Honestly, it is a problem for theists, and it also is a problem for atheists as well, because atheists want to be able to make claims about God being evil, and yet you need to have some kind of foundation. Like, God needs to be violating some kind of norms, or breaking some kind of laws for him to be like really considered evil. Like, how do we really know what is evil? We have to have some kind of gauge, some kind of metric to, to be able to discuss that. But hold on, let me finish. Let me finish. But on the other side, it is a problem for Christians as well. Like, there's not a get out of jail free card for Christians on this one. I believe it is extremely troubling. If you're being honest as a Christian and you evaluate Isaiah 45, then you just have to come to the conclusion God created evil. He's responsible for everything. So I don't really shy away from that at this point. I kind of just accept it and say there has to be some kind of greater good. And I do want to end off. If you saw me push a kid into traffic, you obviously would assume that I'm evil. Okay, you clearly assume that I'm evil. But if you saw that there was a semi truck coming, getting ready to hit that kid, or I saw a laser being focused on his brain from a sniper in the background, and I pushed him out of the way, and he avoided the bullet, but got hit by traffic, but still lived, you would understand that there was probably a greater good that I was serving. So I just say, I don't really know. Neither of us know what is actually out there in the universe. We're evaluating what little bit of information that we have. So, I think we can clearly say right now that it's immoral. But what else is going on? I don't think we have the full picture.
I have a couple of issues with that little last example you just gave as well here. Yeah, you may have been trying to do a greater good, but you're not God. Now, if you had the ability that God would be able to have, if you had the power of God, you would have been able to pull that kid out of the situation. And the problem with evil is not about us trying to say God is evil. That is not what we're trying to. That's not what's behind that argument. The problem of evil is, and again, why we use that classical theistic approach to God is the one, especially like especially from a lot of Christians, this is what we're told about God, that he is all knowing, all perfect, all wise. But he allows things to happen. Now, you can maybe argue that there's a utilitarian approach here, that he's trying to serve some sort of greater good. But at what point? At what point? Like that example I gave with the North Korea example. At what point is it serving a greater good to allow that to go on, something like that to go on for generations? And because if you are a believer in, if you are a theist, I think if you're Christian or Muslim, Jewish, whatever, you do believe that God. You believe in God. You also believe that God gave us the gift of reason. We're using I'm using this reason. There is, where it is very, very clearly that it's a gratuitous evil that clearly serves no greater good. And the point we get to when we come to the logical conclusion is there probably isn't a God. We're not trying to get to God is evil. We run through that and we come to the likelihood is there is no God. And that's why I brought that argument into the equation to begin with.
Okay, well, I've explained my position on that, and I do want to say for the record, I have interviewed North Korean refugees inside of my own house who have talked about seeing people executed and literally having their faces stomped in by guards, and seeing people cooked alive. Well, not cooked alive, but cooked inside of roasting pots. So I do know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm not underplaying that because as I said, I have had actual conversations on this podcast about seeing some of these things. Okay, so I'm not trying to belie the point, but that being said, if you listen to what I'm actually saying, is that there has to be some kind of purpose for doing something that you and I would consider immoral. Like just today in the discussion that I was telling you about, people were talking about Churchill and about the firebombing of places like Dresden, and about the people who were killed as a result of that. And when you look at the overall grander scale of what is actually taking place, the context or the context of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you'll completely understand that a bigger good, a greater good was accomplished by doing something what we would clearly on surface level see as being immoral. Like, I agree with you. Like, firebombing a civilian population, incinerating people in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, that is clearly wrong and immoral. But when you take a look at the greater context of what the battle and what was at stake in World War II, literally like the soul of the entire population of the world was at stake here. So, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation we could get into. That's
a historical conversation. But
you can see that things that we would normally consider immoral can have a greater good in the long run.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can understand a utilitarian approach to these things for a greater good, and sometimes even just a pragmatic approach to this that we might even have to engage in something that we would normally consider an evil,
right?
If it serves a greater good. I can understand that,
right?
But again,
right.
We're talking about God here. You know, this is where it becomes a bit. This is where it becomes a bit more of a difficult.
All right, last question.
Yeah, I think it's about time to move on to the next question.
Last question.
The Tawniest asked this a few different ways. Why does God require help? Angels, demons, prophets, or people with YouTube channels?
Wow, look at all the questions. I mean, I think we know where the audience is heading right now. What direction?
And can I just say before you answer that, yes, and I think Diesel's been very cool coming onto an atheist channel here and having this discussion. So
with the atheist mod,
knowing that you're gonna with an atheist mod as well, knowing that probably the majority of the questions are going to be fired in your direction. So, and I'm glad actually that the audience is by and large seems to be treating that with the courtesy that deserves as well. So, thanks very much.
Well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend as though I'm some kind of like spokesman for God or understand the situation totally. You know, like what I talk about as far as empathy and the writings and the kind of videos that I make is that if you walk into a movie theater and you have like a straw and you look at the corner of the opening credits and then you walk out and you say, well, that movie sucked. And that's all you see. Well, yeah, I can completely understand why you would think that movie totally sucked. All you saw was a blank screen or maybe like a flash of some text that's written. So I totally get that. All right. So what I'm saying is that we don't because you guys as atheists, you guys already believe this. You already believe this universe was able to create itself. There's billions and billions of galaxies out there and all these things out there that somehow are able to follow all of these rules, all of this stuff that completely defies normal logic and rationality, completely defies what we normally think of would be reasonable to accept on face value. One of the things I mentioned was like time dilation. So you have this and you're already willing to accept that. And so if you're willing to accept that, why would you not accept that maybe there's explanations for things that are completely and utterly, as far as I am here to the next galaxy over, the next universe over, maybe that's where our understanding is from here to all the way over there. And we're seeing this small speck of existence, and that's all we're able to understand. So to think that I got the kill all question. I got the question that's going to just kill whether or not there's a God or not. Maybe we could take some time to try to understand and try to think a little bit logically about, the actual nature of these questions, where they're coming from. Because I'll admit as a Christian, I don't think these questions are easily answerable. I think Christian theology, especially flat out, straightforward, clean cut Christian theology, there's a lot of problems there. There's a lot of immorality. I mean, I recently did a video about the problem of the Palestinian-Israel conflict. And I said, look, if we're Christians, don't bring the God equation into this, because if we are talking about this from a biblical perspective, then what God did in this situation is absolutely immoral. Ordering the killing and enslavement and rape of people, that's wrong. And at the end of the day, whatever situation is going on here, if we're Christians and we've line item agree with everything that's going on, then God is ultimately responsible for that situation. So it's immoral and it's honest to try to fix it. We should try to fix it.
Yeah, I would just say, I don't want to get into a long-winded thing about the Israel-Palestine conflict. I've been trying to stay way the fuck away from that on this channel. But I will just say there's a little too much fucking people interpreting what God wants on all sides there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Frankly. And I'll leave.
I'm good in on that.
All right. So I think it's about time we move on to closing statements. So since Scummer went first, we'll start with Diesel for opening or closing statements.
Yeah. First of all, thanks again very much for this discussion. I always like to think of these more of a discussion rather than a debate. I actually love Scummer. I'm a little bit jealous about his hair and his cool accent, but as I said, Scummer and I talk on a monthly basis, and we talk over chips and beers, and sometimes, very frequently, don't even mention God. Sometimes we're just talking about wrestling. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Truth be told, sometimes we're just watching wrestling clips. And the only thing I want to end off is saying is that neither of us have solved this problem completely.
God. Sorry.
What?
Sorry.
The kangaroo grip. The kangaroo.
Sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted you there, Diesel. That's your closing time. I'm sorry.
You're completely good. A lot of our talks recently have centered around wrestling and our love for the sport. And so just because we disagree on a topic does not mean we need to demonize each other. Does not mean we need to hate each other. Does not mean we need to cut each other off like he just cut me off right now mid-sentence, but I'll let that slide. Does not mean that we need to, think negatively of each other. We're traversing this universe together, and let's try to help each other wherever we are. We're Muslim, gay, straight, bi, tri, whatever you are in the spectrum. We are all on this planet together, and so let's try to help each other and understand where we're coming from. And that's all I got to say about that.
Okay. I'll just sum up then. First again, thanks again, Diesel, for coming on here and actually really, and I think it's been a real pleasure to have a real honest conversation with someone as well. And I wanted to say, because I want to make this clear, I said this right in the beginning. I wasn't coming in here today to do a debate thinking I'm going to win. Debate me, bros. I wasn't doing that. It was never my intention. My intention was to come in here, and what I wanted to do, and what I hope I've accomplished to some degree, is to sort of just to say to other atheists out there, don't be afraid of going out and arguing the position that there's no God, or why you think there's no gods, because I've made it clear that I really don't like. Me personally, I don't like this lack of belief thing. People know that. What I just wanted to say is that you can come in, you can make a reasonable case for this, and hopefully you'll be lucky enough to get an interlocutor like Diesel, where we can have an honest conversation and see where it takes us. And I think
you won't be lucky enough to get someone as handsome and put together as me.
Yeah.
You interrupted me, so I'm interrupting you.
Yeah, but I've got hair. So okay. Okay, doke.
Thank you.
Also, I just want to say thanks to Diesel for this conversation, and thanks to Ben for stepping in last minute to agree to moderate this.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I could have done better with timing, but
yeah,
I'll let you guys go a little long occasionally.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, but it was good because it was if the conversation was flowing, you didn't need to interrupt, did you? So.
Well, last thing. Do not be an atheist at all costs. Avoid atheism. But if you're going to be an atheist, modeling Ben and Godless Scummer is a good start. I will say that. I love Ben. I love Godless Scummer. And final thoughts, be more like these guys. And I'm out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we're out, does anyone have anything to plug while we're here? Diesel, I've put the link to your channel in the description of this, but do you want to plug your channel and your podcast while you're here?
Yeah, Ben is a partner in crime, so you can catch him on the channel. So yeah, Ben, what do you got going on?
I can't really start this channel until I get a computer because editing is a thing. I refuse to do it on my phone. But I have a channel that I'm going to be starting up eventually called Capturing Cryptids. Basically, I'm just going to discuss made-up animals and have a little bit of fun with that. I've always loved cryptids. I don't know why.
R.H.E got to.
Sounds like a Pokemon
R.H.E
Go
got
channel.
a computer going out to you, man. It's not going to be like a Apple or anything, but R.H.E got a computer going out to you, Ben, for your contributions to the channel. Thank you so much, and hopefully I'll help you out.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I'll just finish up then by plugging a few things. First of all, just in case people know, I do have a second channel. I'm going to put the link for. I should have put it in the description. I might do that post with, but I do have another channel which I'm posting the link in there called R.H.E with Scummer, which is more history content. Now, it's more of a side project for me that I'm doing. That I just try and do some history content every so often, where I can either go out to a place or react to a video or something. And it's more of a side project for me. Also, I am a fairly regular contributor on One Ring 42's channel on the Media Musing shows most Sundays. Also, I've got one other thing to plug. Tomorrow night, I will be on Godless Granny's channel along with the Lone Wanderer. I think actually we're going to talk a little bit about some of our new projects and side projects and stuff. So, so
you can discuss how you got wrecked tonight.
Yeah, whatever, Diesel. Okay. Yeah. Okie doke.
I'll check you out tomorrow night.
So, So once again, thanks Diesel, thanks Ben. What's the time now?
Thank you so much.
I'm wondering whether to maybe get about 15-20 minutes. I might do a little after show party if anyone's interested. If anyone wants to come,
I'll be there.
We'll have a look. We'll just have a chill out on a beer or something for an hour or so, and then and I'll open it up to anyone else who wants to come in and have a discussion about that. About what we've just.
I murdered all these all-American beers, so I'll go grab some more, and then we can come on.
Okay, so okay. Thanks, sir. Well, once again, thanks guys. Thanks everyone in the chat. Thanks anyone might watch this in the future. Please feel free to leave a comment. Try and be respectful in the chat, because and I'm going to say this based on the comments from my last couple of YouTube videos I put out. Try and actually sit back and listen to everything we've said before bloody commenting, please. Because it's very obvious that people are commenting without actually watching or listening to anything that's being said. And can I just say something else? Because we're having this discussion or stroke debate, whatever you want to call it today. This is what a civilized discussion, debate, friendly discussion looks like. That we get more, where we can get more accomplished. Modern day debate. Pay attention. Thank you. See you all later. Salute.
Goodbye.